Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope you're all having a have had a wonderful week and are having a wonderful Friday. And you Aussies at the end of your wonderful Friday already. So, welcome. And Joanne, it's so good to have you back. How are you doing?
Really, really well, I am. We've had a major shift here with ourselves and our land, and we're feeling
Wow.
in a really, really good place um, and
When you
settled.
say major shifts with your land and what's going on, what do you mean? Is it just generally in Australia or specific to where you are?
Well, more so where I am at this stage because uh, several things have happened. I've got my spring bulbs that aren't meant to show until September. They're actually flowering right now, which is in August, which
Wow.
doesn't, okay. A lot of the different ones, bearded irises, they're all coming up, daffodils, jonquils, even the trees are starting to sprout their spring leaf. Um, the soil is so rich and it's producing. My vegetables have just gone a little bit crazy, which has been nice because we eat what I grow. Um, so it's been so productive, and not only that, it's the communication with the earth, with the animals. And I was telling you before we started, I've got this little robin that comes around, and he does these little flipping floppings and tweetings, and I've got hanging chimes. And the last few days, and this is every single day, he will do his singing and between little shrubs that are there and flowers. And then he'll go up and he'll touch the chime with his beak. And if I'm not looking, it'll get my attention. And if I do again look away, he will come back and I'll watch him in my perivisual, can't say the word, vision, and he'll then go back to touch that chime to make sure I stop and look at him again. And I know it's a little boy because of the beautiful tail and the brightness of his colours. And
That is so
he
awesome.
he is
It's
magic.
amazing how when we change, because remember we are obviously the um, center, if you will, of our own little universe. In other words, our world. And I don't mean that in an egoistic way. Um, and when our energy and when our frequency starts changing, we start feeling happier, feeling more joyful, feeling less stressed. Nature and everything around us will always respond accordingly. So it's amazing to see that that's what's happening with you, right? I mean, obviously, so much is changing within you. And of course, your environment is then going to start changing in accordance with that as well. That's very cool, Joanne. Wow, that's beautiful.
It is, and to be able to see it, you've said these things, and I've yeah, yeah. But when you're actually in it and you see it and you're feeling it, it's like, wow. So this is the real. This is it. We
Yeah.
aren't as humans meant to be in negative states anyway. We're not meant to be. So we're learning to have that control, going in and looking and just changing your vibration and realizing it's been an experience these last few weeks, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to have these experiences just for my own,
Exactly.
and mental health, and they're beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, hello, you two lovelies, the Lisa and the Jessica.
Right.
My two usual suspects. Love seeing you girls in the chat. You're kidding for 2 days. Anyway, Joanne, we are talking about an interesting topic today, which is the Jehovah's Witnesses. Wow. Now, I mean, you guys are probably well aware that over the past few weeks, on Jesse's show, we've been doing mega exposures on the Mormon Church. and all the layers, because we know that the Mormon Church forms one of the pillars of the Illuminati, right? So the layers that they hide behind. And I have no doubt that it would be the same. I mean, Scientology, we've looked into with Bryce not too long ago. And remember, if you guys follow Bryce's show, one of the guys that was exposing Scientology just suddenly never woke up. So you know, these are big topics that we deal with here. Now, Joanne, I know you weren't talking about the Jehovah's Witnesses. You did not grow up Jehovah's Witness, and for those of you who don't know, Joanne has got a background in SRA, lots of family abuse, that sort of thing, from her family, etc. But what you were saying to me is that you only joined the church in your second year of marriage. So you must have been like 19 or 20 when you joined. Now, I just find that interesting because I'm sure I'm going to know what you're going to say about stuff that happened in the Jehovah's Witness church, right? But it's always interesting that when we haven't healed, because this to me again indicates when we haven't healed from one experience, we're going to find ourselves jumping into the next experience without having practiced sufficient discernment, because you can't when you're so sore and when the wounds are so infected. You go to a place that you think is safe, right? And then it turns out to be out of the frying pan into the fire type scenario. So we see that a lot with people that have been, and not just SRA or RSA, but with any form of abuse. It's kind of like the predators smell them. Man. It's like the predators know. There's like something like a lion or a shark smells blood. Boy, these predators will find the kids, especially the kids I'm talking about now that have been violated, right?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I was, like most of the viewers know, I was brought up with going across many different religions. It was a part of wherever we were, whatever the main big religion was, we were in it and we were right in it. So as a child, all the time, and the Jehovah's Witnesses went around and they did their witnessing work. And of course, they'd come to your door and knock on the door. And I recall my mother saying very, very quickly, get under something, do not move. We can't make a sound because they're not allowed to know that we're in here. And it was, these witnesses were like, no, you hide from these people. You know, these were really bad people. You did not open that door to them. And then when I got married, and one day they knocked on my door when I was at home. And I do believe Tony was at work. And I thought, I got to hide. And it was like, whoa, hang on a minute. I've never spoken to these people. My parents always feared them, made us hide. There's something I've got to get from these people. I'm opening that door. There's a reason they did all of that and told us never to open the door to these people. So that's when I opened the door and I said, come on in. And of course,
that whole, I mean, isn't that exactly? I mean, I just can't help. Sorry to chime in here, but I can't help but think, you know, for those of us who are listening to Caleb's shows, especially, he says, you know, you give them access. You know, as long as you say no, they don't have access. It's the same with anything, right? And that day you gave them access, right? Wow, isn't that interesting?
Isn't it? Because I needed to know the answer to my questions and why.
Right.
Why did we do it? And to the extent of having to hide. I mean, they couldn't see in the house. There was curtains. You know, that really always, I needed my answers. So from there, of course, I entered into a Bible study, which went quite well, and they seemed to be nice people. And I thought, well, Well, I'll give them a run for their money. And they came with their Bible and their Watchtower Awake magazines and study guides. And I got out, I think I've got 7 different Bibles, 7 different denominations, and I had them all there. And as we did this Bible study, not did we just take it from what they said of their Bible, we sat down and went through every single Bible on every single verse that went along with this Bible study. And this went on for over a year, because I wasn't going to take their word for it out of their Bible, because they had a different Bible. And to me, there should be only one. So why is there so many of them? So I had to cross-reference to find out what they were saying, whether it was true. Most of it was quite aligning with me from what I'd known as a child, except when it came to blood transfusions. You were not allowed to have a blood transfusion at all, not even plasma at that stage. I don't know if they've lapsed on that belief now. So don't quote me on that. We could not. We had like a piece of paper that had direction that because of our standing with God, we would not take blood, not even in an emergency. So we'd rather die than have somebody else's blood put in us. And we had that, and we had to sign it. And it was literally official, and medical people, and that they couldn't give us blood because it was by our choice. We didn't have to vote because we got that exemption because we supported God's kingdom, who's not of this earth. So we didn't have to involve ourselves in political dealings, except we did have to pay Caesar's like his taxes and things like that. So we couldn't be against the law in any way. We still had to give Caesar his things. But we didn't have to vote for the worldly kingdom because we've already cast our vote to God's kingdom, who was none of this earth things coming down. That kingdom's going to come down. So I stayed in that. I was in that religion for about 7 years, maybe, all up, because I got pregnant. I had my children when I was in there, and they did go to meetings as smaller ones. But once Daniel was at primary school, I broke away after he wasn't in primary school very long, too many years. But by that time, I was so disillusioned. I'd had my daughter who had been interfered with by another family's child, whom, when it went to the elders, because I did not let that rest. I mean, as soon as that happened, I was there when it happened. It was stopped straight away. But I took it as far as I could, because I wasn't, that child, that even though he was a child who did what he did to my daughter, did it, and it wasn't the parents. My argument all the time was with them, where did he learn it? Where did he get those?
How old was your daughter when that happened?
She would have been about 2, just
right.
Little, only little. And we're visiting these people, and they had children. And of course, when you were part of a Jehovah's Witness congregation, you are not to associate with those that are not in the religion. You do not socialize at all. Okay? You only socialize within those that are in the truth. That's what they call it. It is called the truth. And believe me, it's full of lies. But if you do happen to associate with people outside of that religion, you will be reprimanded. And if you do not stop associating, you will be disfellowshipped. Okay? These are the rules you do not break. Now, I said to them, that's all well and good, that's all very good, but what's going to happen about this? 1, the police need to be called because this young man has been abused. That's how he's learnt that behaviour. And you got to remember, when it was taken to the elders, you're dealing with men. You're not got a woman in there. You're one woman, and they're two men or more. Okay?
Wow.
Never forget that bit. All right. Now,
Can I just ask you there, when we're looking, I'm just looking at the structure of, or sort of basics of the Jehovah's Witness. Do they have a similar type setup? Like, for example, the Mormons have a very structured setup in terms of their hierarchy. Is the Jehovah's Witness the same? So they also have their top members and, their priests and whatever it is. I don't know the religion at all. I mean, except
okay.
they've often in the past tried to come knocking on my door, and I'm like, no, thank you, I'm good. So yeah, and then is it also predominantly patriarchal? Is it mainly a patriarchal religion as well?
Yes, I would read you the word.
And I mean, are there any weird quirks like the Mormon women and I think the men too actually have got to wear their magic underwear, and which is, I don't know how much magic, from what I'm hearing, there's no magic that happens with those underwear.
Yeah, but I'll get into more of that as we go a bit deeper into it, okay? But this is how my son, he was about 5, he was about 5 when we left, so he's got scattered memories, and he wanted me to read this. One thing he really noticed with them was that they were very much men-dominated. Everybody came under the domination of those elders and what they called the brothers, all right? They were very egocentric, these elders. So you'd have the elders who would give any of your talks, and they'd do any judicial over their congregation, okay? But then you'd have the travelling overseers. Now, these men would, and there was always men, and usually their wife would come with them. But when a travelling overseer came to your congregation, I mean, it was like putting on for a queen or a king. Now, if you weren't up to their standards or the elders' standards or what they perceived, you didn't get to see that travelling overseer. You didn't get to speak to that person. Only certain members did, okay, if you were on that level. Otherwise, you were in that audience and all you did was listen to all the talks he gave for the week he spent in that congregation, and then you travelled to the next one. Now, you've got to understand, everything they needed, these travelling overseers and their wives and families, whatever it was paid by the hosting congregation. They paid for nothing.
Wow.
Okay, nothing. Then you would take it from there to a governing body, which is a group of elders, and they usually are in Bethel, which is their headquarters. And if you ever want to look at the head of the snake, have a look at Bethel, their building, from an aerial point of view, and you'll be able to see it. So
then what would that, if you're talking about the head of the snake, if from an aerial view, how would that then be linked, if you can answer this, to the Vatican and the Catholic Church? Because when we're looking at the audition room of the Vatican, I mean, it's as clear as daylight that is the head of the serpent, right?
So
I mean,
Jehovah's Witness,
grade 1 could not get fooled by that.
They are under the Vatican anyway.
Are they? I was going to say, yeah.
And people don't realise that, because that's what's hidden.
How big are the Jehovah's Witnesses? When we're looking at the religion as a whole, compared to, let's say, the Mormons, because we know that the Mormons, as far as I know, in recent years has been the fastest growing religion. But I think not so much anymore, because I think a lot of people have left the church because they've realized something is not quite kosher there, right? So, I mean, compared to Christianity, and Islam obviously is another very fast growing religion right now. I mean, it's taking over, right? But compared to, let's say, Mormonism, Scientology, stuff like that, how big is Jehovah's Witness compared to that?
About the same, just as big and just as wide-reaching and just as controlling.
Where would they be most centered? So which areas, where does it come from? And I'm sorry, this is not a trick question. I'm just trying to, because I've never really looked into the Jehovah's Witness. Where would they have originated from? Who started it? And what was the I want to say the mission statement, but I know that the church, it's not the mission statement. You know, company has a mission statement. So what, but you know what I'm saying? What's the mission statement of the Jehovah's Witness? I'm just trying to figure all of this out. If there's anyone in the chat who can give me some answers here, I'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, because let me see. Yeah, Charles T. Russell, sorry. I knew it was Charles T. Russell, his name was. He was part of the Mormon church and he broke away.
Okay, now we're talking. I knew it. I knew it. I knew there was a connection there. Oh my gosh. Okay, Charles T. Russell, did you say? He started Jehovah's Witness when?
Hang on, I gotta look at my notes. I've written things down. Whoa, and I'm losing everything because I'm interesting. Now,
thanks, Lisa. I don't feel so alone and so dumb. Wow, that is super interesting. Okay, we don't have to look at that now. I can actually do that research because I think that would be a really interesting one to do, the history of the Jehovah's Witness.
Okay, I can do all that for you. I'll get that all together and we can make this go on. Anyway, he was actually...
Of course they've come from the Mormon church. But now, why did he break away? Was it on hostile terms? Or was it because they wanted to expand? Or he had different ideas?
He had different ideas as well. He didn't agree with all the doctrines, so he started his own, a breakaway. And he then went, because that was on, he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where he started all of this from. Okay? And this was on, he was, let me see, he was 64 when he died. That was in 1916 he died. So he started all this long before then. He was born in February. He was an Aquarius. And would you believe his birthday was 16th of February, 1852. So this is going back, way back. It's an old, it's not a new, current anything. And yes, he believed
so he was born then. So he was born in 1852. So I would imagine then Jehovah's Witness would have started in the end of the 1800s, early 1900s then. That's when they would have then started. If he started it, I'm saying, giving him about 50 years old, or even before, who knows? But it's very interesting. Wow. So what were the talk to us a little bit about your experiences within the church on a personal level. What did you experience being in the Jehovah's Witness church? Is it called a church or a temple? What's it called?
It's called the Kingdom Hall and it's congregation. Church is no, it's not a church. No, it's got
a congregation.
No
sorry,
it's
a Jehovah's Witness.
It's a congregation, and they meet at a kingdom hall. And as I said, there's no statues, carving images, nothing. Most of the kingdom halls, well, a lot of them do not have windows. They are windowless, and they're surrounded, all the walls, by big, heavy, blood red curtains from ceiling to floor.
Why?
And there's a big
So are the walls white? Are the walls all painted white?
Behind it, yes.
No windows and red curtains.
Yeah, but you can't see the walls. They hang along the walls as well, from ceiling to floor.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a bit wild.
What's the reason? Do we know what that symbolizes? Because
when we deep dive,
I just, again, I feel so clever nowadays because I have all you smart survivors telling me things. I have the likes of you, I have the likes of Jesse, I have the likes of Cable, listen to me, Caleb. Because that red, red is a strong magic color, and that represents the dying light. So that, to me, would be very interesting if that is what they're symbolizing. I'm sure it could have different meanings as well. But anyway, carry on.
So from there, as I said, I grew up with all these different religions, so I really, really needed to know the truth. This is one of my favourite things. I'm going to let you see it all. This is something my mother got me before, when I was a child, actually. Can you read what it says? Oh, I don't know if it's...
Dear God, the light's on there. I can see, dear God. The more I know, the more I
need to know.
Need to know.
The more I need to know. So that's always been me, and I'm still like it today. And if it's a square trying to go into a round hole, well, I'm going to make sure it goes in there, and I'm going to get rid of the rough edges and find a way to put it in there. So I'll find the information I'm looking for, basically. So I was one of these people that I'd have my Bible or any of my books that I had, and I'd always carry them sort of like holding them here and my arms tucked around them. That's just me. That's how I did do it. And because I really had that thirst and wanted to find that there really was this kind, loving God somewhere. This God really did exist. And I've learned through the years, no, he didn't, because we used to go to the Salvation Army, Uniting Church, the Church of England, Seventh-day Adventists, been a part of most of them. And when I walked in there, and they seemed lovely and all the rest of it, and then they get you in, they draw you in, and then you start seeing a few little quirks come up. And you got so suddenly, one experience that really threw me was I went to a meeting one evening with my two littlies, and there was a man and his wife there we'd never met. Nobody had known about these people. Where they came from, I don't know. Their children had been taken off them by the state, and they were facing prison time. So me being me, I went up and I asked some uncomfortable questions like, hello, who are you? Where you come from? And it was like, oh, no, we're doing special works and special blessings and special whatnots because we've got to go to prison. And I was like, okay, why are you going to prison? Okay, why'd you lose your kids? I've got two littlies. Oh, well, this happened, that happened, but we're quite innocent. I said, so what's this and what's that? And that's when the elder stepped in and said, Joanne, no more questions. Go look after your own kids. No more. I was like, okay, there's my red flag, and I'm the bull. Here I come, because I won't let it go. I just won't. So I actually went to the most senior elder. I can't remember what he's called at this stage. But anyway, and I said, look, I'm not happy, and I'm about to get quite vocal, because I've got questions and I will have them answered. Because even the scriptures you teach that there is no going to court, getting anything like that, or going to prison when you're a Jehovah's Witness and you're not doing anything wrong. These people are Jehovah's Witnesses. You elders are scurrying around them. You're literally getting overseers, Bethel, writing letters to try and keep these people out of prison. Why? That doesn't sit right. So they said to me, look, we're going to come visit you in your home and we'll talk to you about it. Okay. So within days, they came and visited. And I made sure Tony was home, because Tony didn't go. He was never a Jehovah's Witness. He interacted a little with them, but his favourite part with these people, because he does have a bit of a knowledge of the Bible, was to argue points with them and say, well, your own Bible is contradicting you. And he's still like that today. If you're going to throw religion at me, you better be able to explain it, because he can, and he's done his research. So he clashed with them a few times. And they came out and visited this day, and they sat both of us down and they said, look, this is the situation. There's been allegations that these children have been interfered with, but the parents say, no, they never did it. It's got to be someone else, misidentification, okay, of someone else, not the parents. And that's why they're backing the parents. And I remember standing up. I was a size 26.
Hang on, let me just understand that the church was backing the parents and not the children.
That's right. They're trying to keep the parents out of prison. But see, what they were doing was they were saying to these parents, oh, you haven't been a regular coming to meetings, start coming regularly and we will back you.
Right.
And I said, well, that's a hypocritical thing to do. That is, no, this is wrong. And I hadn't long been to court and put my father in prison for exactly for incest. So he didn't sit right with this girl at all. So I then, from that time, because they continued on and they had their sentence reduced. Okay, they had their sentence reduced through Bethel getting involved, and this is the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses, vouching for these people whom really did the crime they were going to prison for. Well, they lost their kids, and sadly they went into the system, went with other Jehovah's Witnesses, and the family they went with, they were a bit older, and believe me, they were not nice people, and they were very, very nasty, spiteful to these children. That was one incident and then I went to a meeting another week or so later. And then I was then called into a back room. This is one of the first times I was called into a back room with 3 elders and myself to have a talk about my attitude towards Jehovah and his governing body, and to be put back in my place. And of course, I didn't take that very well at all. No. These men, you know how you got caught and you're told, and then they say, this is the verdict, damn, it's done. This is what these men were. This is the way it's going to be done. They then pick certain scriptures, which I will go through as we go through the, like the elders' book, which is so different to what we know as part of a congregation. But if you didn't comply, they cut off everybody else. They would actually go and say to other people, even from this stage, you need to stay away from this person at this stage because that person's being corrected. So there's no support for that person. They get isolated and shunned unless they shut their mouths and go living and don't ask the questions and don't get their answers. I'm not angry. I'm still frustrated that they still had that. You're only a woman. You've got no say in any of this.
Right.
You know what I'm? Yeah. It's like on a Sunday you'd go to a meeting. The first one would be done by an elder or a qualified brother who would give a talk for about 45 minutes, and then you'd have 15 minutes to have a break, go to the toilet, do whatever. And they, as I said earlier, they put out the Watchtower and the Awake magazines. Now, the Watchtower would go on different world events of what's happening and how witnesses are doing and what they're doing and what other churches were doing. But the Awake was a study magazine, and it had 2 or 3 articles in it that on that Sunday after that talk, you stayed for another hour and they would read each paragraph, and at the end of each paragraph, there were a set of 3 or 4 questions that you would then put your hand up, because you had to pre-study all this before you went to the meeting, and write down your answers or write down the scriptures, and you then got to answer the questions that were asked. But you were given the scriptures to answer them. But see, Shanti, a person like me, the more I know, the more I need to know, will then use reference, context, and trying to bring it together so it made a sense and a picture. So it wasn't just a plucked scripture that's been put there so that supports what they're actually preaching. So that's what I did. And I did that I still do it. Because if I don't do a lot of research and broaden that, it's only giving me a narrow view, and it's dogma, like it's, again, predictive programming. Okay?
Exactly.
So I know they did those that there, and then when, as I said, my daughter was interfered with, and my first thing was, and Tony was, police are being involved. You know, we allowed the elders to know, and yep, now time for the police. No, because they said if we went to the police, they'd deny it even happened. Even the elders would deny that it happened. Wow. Now that.
So again, we're dealing with like a secret brotherhood, because again, it's this boys' club, right? Where we will deal with what happens in here. We will protect the perpetrator. We will, the kids are too young to understand what's gone on. They're going to go to jail for a while, but we're supporting them.
But you know what support?
Again.
Do you know what scripture they use to support the police and taking your brother to court is wrong? The scripture where it says you got to have more than 2 witnesses. You must have more than 2 witnesses, or else you do not take it to court. You do not take your brother to court. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I see more and more how these people bend laws according to suit themselves, because on one level I can understand, right? Let's get practical. Unless you have sufficient proof, and unless that, and let's not waste the court's time. There's that to it. But then there's the other side to it. When you're dealing with these kinds of abuses, there are not witnesses and there are children involved. But of course, they're all, if they've come from the Mormon church and if they're part of the secret brotherhood, then at the end of the day, they're all involved in the same shenanigans. So they're all covering each other's asses. Excuse the, what's that word?
French.
Fun. Fun. Crazy.
Oh, yeah. Actually, now I got it. Yeah. Well, anyway, you got to understand too, I was about maybe 25, 24, 26, around that. This is when this all happened. So, and a new mum. Like, my children weren't that old when all this went down. So I said to them, well, what's going to happen? If this gets looked after from within, what's going to happen? One, that little boy needs counselling. That little boy needs to be helped. Because that little boy was 7. That little boy has been abused. Well, yep, they'd do that. He'd get counselling. All that would happen. And they would reprimand or go do investigation with the parents. By the time I went to the next meeting, which is 2 days later, Chantelle, 2 days, it was announced that that particular family had moved on to another congregation. They had fly-by-night them. Now, because they'd done a transgression, which they did not tell the congregation what it was, the woman, her punishment that was given by Jehovah from the governing body was to cut her long hair short. Now, I could never trace where that family went, and believe me, Tony and I tried, because we were not happy at all with any of it. And that's
so if you're saying you couldn't trace where they went,
nope.
What are you intimating anything? I mean, they surely they should not. I mean, they must be traceable unless they're under witness protection, right?
Well, we could not find them in any congregation anywhere at all. Now, we didn't try in Queensland, and we know there was 2 other families maybe within the same period that were relocated to Queensland. They were elders that were stepped down because of misconduct with children, but they were only relocated to the other side of Australia and stepped right back into the same positions to do the same atrocities over there. So again, like I suppose with the Catholic Church more so, they moved these people around so they could get them away from where the offence has been done, so they could have them go over and start somewhere else and keep that chain of people and children being moved.
Max has got an interesting question here. How does one help a family member see some truth about being, hang on, let me just put this up on the board. How does one help a family member see some truth about being in the church without losing your relationship with them? This is such a, this is such a tough topic. I have to say, because again, all of this stuff we exposing lately around the churches, the Catholic Church, the Mormon Church, the Scientologists, Jehovah's Witnesses now. It's very obvious that religion has really been a tool that they've used to divide and conquer people. And as much as what they used COVID to divide and conquer families, religion, they've been doing it since the beginning of time. And it's such a sensitive topic to be able to do that. But, you know, at the end of the day, all I'm going to say is we cannot change people. We cannot force them to do anything that we want them to do. So my advice to that is step back, just love them anyway, let them walk their journey through the church and be there at the end of the day when they decide to come out or something happens that they just allow them to be. And through example,
yes,
show
that's
them
it.
another way.
Yeah, and show your love, show your support. Share how, and don't contradict. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't, you said that they've got to make that decision for themselves, but if they can see manifest in you how you are with them and with other people, they're going to see the difference. You see, by your example, do you lead? You know, and yeah, talk about God, talk about the love and how, you know, it's in our lives and we feel it, and be that example, but don't be pushy. Don't argue with them, because I mean that itself is counterproductive, and that's exactly what, you know, the principalities want you to do, is they want that distension there, but be that love and that support and fill the space, you know, fill that space that their church is lacking in. Because you know where the church is lacking. You know where her being, or he being a part of this religion, you can see where they're being hurt. So be there as that comfort at those times. So being mindful about when your interaction is and how your interaction is. I guess that's the best way I can sort of explain
for sure. I agree. Through example, through in your, to your knowledge and your experience. Now, I hope your answer is going to be no, but I have to ask. According to what you know, is there any SRA that occurs there? Are there any of these ceremonies, the MK Ultra, the mind control? It seems to me there's definitely some kind of a kiddie fiddling going on there, from what you're saying. But it would seem, if that's just happening on the surface, it must be, and especially if you were just on the surface. I mean, if you were a child born into the system of the Jehovah's Witness, it might be different. But you've come in at a later stage in your life, so maybe you were not privy to all the different things that obviously was going on behind the scenes. But I'm wondering if you have known about anything like that, any of the, as I said, I actually put SRA there, which is satanic ritual abuse, but you corrected me, RSA, which is ritualistic sexual abuse. So can you speak to us on that?
Well, because as you said, I didn't grow up in it, there was a lot of functions and a lot of gatherings that I would hear, but only mainly afterwards, that certain families or certain ranking all got together and did. Okay? Now, I've come from Salvation Army as well, and I was literally born into that. And SRA, I know how it works. And we did go to those gatherings. Okay? So I can, from what I know and what I saw and heard, it's there. It's definitely the same. It is there. But no, I was not privileged enough to go, although they started really loving my son. And this particular older couple would, during the meeting, if he, you know, was a bit not wanting to sit still or fidgety or whatever, they come over and they would literally just take him. And that's when it's sort of like, no, this is stopping, and it's stopping right now. I'm not stupid, okay? I'm
Starting
just
to
not
groom him, yes.
grooming. And I
Hmm.
know they were the groomers. And they're the ones that lived in the apartment at the Kingdom Hall. Because at the back of the Kingdom Hall, there's always an apartment for that older couple.
Right.
Always. Yes. And I left not long after that. There's no way my son, or like they weren't interested in my daughter, it was my son. And it's always the sons.
Yeah, the boys, they go for the
Yeah.
boys. Hmm.
It's like when we had a royal visitor many, many moons ago, it was my brothers that he wanted and that he hurt.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's always the boys. Because that's a portal, you see. That's the portal they use. I don't know if you know that, but it is the portal that they actually use, Mormons as well, because that gets them the
I have
highest
heard
thing.
that, but perhaps you could explain that to our viewers. For those who don't know, guys, I'm sorry, I've got my winter throat and cough. So forgive me.
Well,
Maybe you can,
originally,
Joanne, speak to the viewers on how they and why they use the boys as a portal.
well, they believe that it is the most purest and the closest. You've got to understand too. I don't know how to say this on YouTube. The men to orgasm, most pleasure is in the anus. Okay, we all know that. So when they
Yes.
do that to the young boys, they get the purest connection through to the entity, the demon, the fallen, whatever you want to call them.
So the sex magic, it's the that would be the portal, because sex magic, when we're looking at how they do these rituals and ceremonies and stuff, there's always, no matter what they're doing, there's always sex magic
Yes.
present. So sex magic is coupled with everything.
See, girls, if they were that way with girls, they wouldn't get that connection so pure through to where they want to go, and they wouldn't get the outcome or the purity of the outcome they desire. If that
Right.
makes sense. If I think that's
And
the best
yet
way to
it's so not pure. That connection is so not pure, right?
no, but they believe it is. They
Yes, that's what
believe
I'm
that
saying.
the actual the sex magic using a little boy in his anus is gets you straight through, and what you want will come true, and it gives you it gives you so much power. That's the word I'm looking for. It's the power they get because that's what they receive. I mean, that little boy is basically buggered. I'm not kidding. And then just thrown away. Literally thrown away. But they've got that power. They've taken that essence and it's come through that portal, which is that little boy's anal. It's
Yeah,
disgusting, I know, but it is real and it does
yeah,
happen.
I get it. Yeah.
And the more the
I'm
boy
just,
screams, the better. The more pain, the better. The better connection, the better getting through, the better everything. If you understand,
I
the
know,
more
because
pleasing.
everything is depraved. Everything is depraved. I mean,
Yeah.
with that, it's not about enjoyment. Yes, they have that bliss from the orgasm, I would imagine, and the amount of, because they would have conjured up energy for that to happen. I mean, they would have been doing all their incantations and God knows what all else,
And the
for
chanting
these ceremonies. Yeah.
and their
I'm
songs,
looking at
which are chants.
Joanne. Sorry?
Their songs, which are the chants.
Yes, yes.
And I'll bring that out as we might have to make this a bit of a series because it's going to be deep. Yeah, because there's a lot to get through.
Well, I think that's really what we should do. Maybe that's what we should do. You know, in futures, just to do a couple more of these sessions, and what these, you know, what the belief system around that is as well. I'd like that. So we can definitely delve deeper into that, because if what you're saying, absolutely, the Jehovah's Witness is now an offspring of the Mormon Church. They would have already had some dodgy ideas about things, and he might not be agreeing with everything, not calling it a church, but calling it a congregation. I think that's even more manipulative, because it kind of sounds more like a family, or, you know. So you bring that together, and, you know, you're this close-knit brotherhood and sisterhood, and you never ever turn your back on the other. Everyone else will suffer, but we won't. No,
that's right.
It's the same as the other stuff. It really is. It's the same.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, the rates that go on there are amazing. The young females are a lot of the young females are, and this is. But as I said, we'll go into that as we look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, because there is a lot to see.
Jan Belton is saying, yeah, I knew a lady who had grown up in the Jehovah's Witness kingdom, and she told me, I'll just put it up here. Why don't I put it up there? When she was young, they used to separate the children from the parents, and the children were abused by the older men. That's exactly what they do in the Mormon church. They separate the kids, and it's usually the grandparents taking the kids in the Mormon church.
The old couple. Yes.
Yeah.
And they took them to another room that had no windows. Again, this is what happens. Yes, your friend's so right. Joanne Belton, your friend is so right. And that's why
windows. Why not windows?
Well, you can't climb out if there's no window, can you?
At least put them at the very top, at least. Sure, no windows. I would just, and red velvet curtains all the way down.
And around the
What shade of red? What shade of red?
Blood red, and if they changed it, it would go to like a burgundy. That was the other red they would use.
Yeah, because I know that burgundy color, that burgundy color is common with that. And that to me would be like the dying light as well. You know?
And it's to do with different times of the year and what's going on to what curtains will put up.
Wow.
Okay. So, but as I said, we can work through it. Absolutely. So, yeah, this does happen. And that's why I got out of it, because my children weren't going to go through any of what I went through. So I hightailed out really quick as soon as I saw any of the warning signs. And when this family, which I'll go back to, that disappeared over a couple of days, that never to be found again, that was scary, because we could not find them. That was scary. But then to be told, well, you know, the mother cut all her hair off because she had really long hair, and that was the punishment they set from the government body in Bethel. It's what?
She has to cut her hair. I mean, what's the story in the Bible? Who had to? No, that was Samson that had to cut his hair.
Yes.
Took his strength away.
Yes. So we'll go more into why she cut her hair and what that meant symbolically when she had to do it, because she's the one that had to bear the brunt of the punishment, not the father or the brother.
I'm thinking, why is that though? Why did she have to why was she the bearer of the punishment?
Okay, when you're married, this is another belief and teaching, is the woman is subservient to the husband. The head of the house is the man, and he has final decision on everything. Okay, a woman, you must get up before the day has begun. You must prepare everything ready for that family. Then you must be the last to go to bed, and everything should be done and sorted. And you also have to grow and get all your food. It was really man dominated over. So if that husband then says, well, you've done wrong, wife, because this has happened, so you have to bear and take the punishment from Jehovah, the loving God, okay? And it's not that you got to stop abusing your child. It is, you're going to have your hair cut. See, they're very aware of what went on. The elders knew about all this. And it was the elders who had said to me, these people are new in the congregation. They've been there only a few weeks. Please go and befriend them. Take your children there. But they knew. They already knew. It is so orchestrated. It is so...
but you know that your hair is an extension of your nervous system. Your hair is so important. Again, I'm thinking about that because, you know, if you look at things, you hear like very common statements like, the hair on my neck stood on end. In other words, my entire nervous system was on high alert. And your hair is actually an extension of that. That's why we shouldn't be coloring it or anything, actually.
No, we know.
So your hair is very important when it comes. It's like your antennae, right? It picks up stuff in your environment. So
and it communicates.
I'm wondering why they would have. Yeah, so she had to cut her hair exactly with that. Yeah, it would actually make sense. And as you say, she's the martyr, because she would be the martyr taking on the sin for her husband and her son. So she had to pretty much be persecuted for the man.
Yes, and she took it. She didn't bother her at all. She did it. And I know they cut her hair off because they had it in a lot, like a sealed plastic bag, to show me in that back room with those damned elders. So they had her hair and they were keeping that hair. They were keeping it sealed as it was when it was cut off, with that energy to be used later on in ritual.
I was going to say also, and it's a very, I mean, in African witchcraft, oh boy, the first thing they look for is your hair.
Yeah.
If the medicine men want to cast a spell on you, they will take, and that's why, especially having African people work in your house in this country, and if they wanted to cast a spell on the white man, the Mlungu, the first thing they got was the hairbrush with hair. And that's how and I don't know how they did it or what they do with it, but hair is a very important element. And I guess they can extract DNA from that if they're wanting to do cloning and making avatars and all sorts of DNA splicing and stuff like that.
Well, not only that, they can, through the person's hair, because with it, their antenna, DNA, all of that, the essence of that person, live or dead, with the Salvation Army, they collect a piece of hair. They tie a particular coloured ribbon around it, and that was very significant. And that piece of hair was enchanted and given to a person. There's another use of hair, and that's also very powerful.
But wouldn't that be drawing power? Because wouldn't that be the same as, when we're going back in time, the Catholic Church in particular, I mean, they were keeping the saints' bones and things like that. Now, again, when you're going back to what Caleb was telling us, I think he called that soul sourcing, because they would then pay homage to this. And here's a very popular one. I mean, I know when I was in Austria, I went to Mozart's Geburtshaus, Mozart's birth house, and they had a piece of his hair there as well. And they would take in a lot of, and these missing body parts because they're venerating them. They're venerating and they're having pieces of hair. It's like they bow down to this. It's not an artifact. What's the other word when you have little amulets and things with someone's bones or someone's tooth? There's a word for it.
Oh.
But that's what they were doing with the Catholic saints and stuff like that. That's why there were so many body parts going missing.
Well, they did that when my mother died, and I was handed one of the little bags, and so was my sister. My brothers were not given it, only my sister and I. So,
wow.
And I've still got that bag. It's actually in the safe. It's not near me. I don't want it near me. But I'm not letting it out of my.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting, and I'd love to hear if any of our viewers have any comments on that. I mean, obviously, I'm sure if I had to go do some research, I'd probably come up with some stuff. But in the meantime, if there is, and we will definitely carry on these conversations, because I think now more than ever, us on these platforms are going to be the ones that expose the churches. It's going to be nobody else other than us. We have to sit here, it's on these platforms when we speak to people like yourself, when we speak to people like Asia Rain, etc., on the Mormon Church, etc. This is, it's the individual that's coming out and exposing and shedding light into this, on this darkness. It's us, going to be us that takes these guys down. Because not because we're going to be shooting and blowing them up, but because more and more people are going to be waking up. And when you're awake, you can't screw with someone's consciousness anymore. You can't manipulate them. You can't force them to do things. You can't do what they call mind sex, because mind sex is like the power of suggestion. And we've been mind fucked, excuse my language, for how long now? We've always had these guys with the power of suggestion through magazines, through advertising, through churches, through government establishments, through media, the power of suggestion all the time, mind fucking us to the point that we don't even know who we are anymore. I know who I am, but I think there's a lot of people out there who are very confused and have been completely led around by the nose and nose ring. And I look forward to the future and exposing more of this, Joanne. So I want to just say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. Is there anything else from your side that you'd maybe just like to say before we close?
Just, I think be loving. Love's the only answer. Love. That's it. Love is the only answer. Only staying love.
Is.
Yes.
It definitely is. Most definitely.
And love those around you. And be there when they're coming out, because they're going to need you. And you're all beautiful. This family here that we are. You're so encouraging and so beautiful. And don't ever stop that, because, guys, you are absolutely beautiful. I can feel every single one of you running through my body. I think you are amazing people. So please, just be there for those.
We do have a special family, that's for sure. As much as what we have our trolls who will want to take us down around every corner, but that's only because they know we speak truth. And the truth can never be broken, ever. Only falsities are now going to be broken down. So bit by bit, we will continue. Thank you so much, Joanne. And thank you to all you guys in the chat for joining us. If there's any feedback you guys have on the Jehovah's Witness, I want to say church, but it's not a church. Kingdom, what's it called?
It's called a kingdom hall, is where they meet, and it's a congregation, not a church.
The Jehovah's Witness congregation.
Yes. That's right.
So
And they do over
if you guys have any tea, send it to me. And thank you so much, Jan. And as always, I think you are, and I agree with Lisa D, you are a phenomenal person. You've come through so much. And I look forward to,
actually, Lisa D, she's been rude, but Lisa D has also said here, and no one can see in, no windows. So true, Lisa. Yes, absolutely. And Miss Flick is growing and doing very well. We'll be sending through some more stuff soon.
Lisa's little Joey.
Yeah, she's
Little Flicky Flick. She is so cute, Flick. She's got a little energy about her. She's wide awake, always looking around. She knows, hey, it's just a matter of time and I'm out of here. I'm going to be jumping around all over the place. Okay, guys. God bless you all. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weekend. I'll let you know what's coming up on the weekend. Just watch the community boards, and I will see you on the weekend. Have a beautiful day.